Hello friends, welcome to Current Jots. This is Manifest IS. So today we'll be discussing about important schemes for health and education which are important for prelims this year. So coming to the first format, which is first we should be clear about who is the beneficiary, what is the scheme for a particular beneficiary, and what are the age groups. So as we can see from this slide, 0 to 6, that is children, were covered largely under ICDS program, that is Anganwadi scheme. Now under ICDS, we have support for children, we have support for pregnant and lactating mothers, and also support for adolescent girls. Now coming to 6 to 14, 6 to 14 is nothing but right to education. Then we have 14 to 18, that is Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and also 18 to 21 is Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. Now coming to your graduate courses, which is handled by AICTE or UGC or Medical Council of India, depending on the stream of your studies. And further, continuing the master's courses and also the PhD, it is under continuous and lifelong learning. Now please make note that the new education policy which was just announced, that will cover comprehensive coverage of 3 to 18. So that's a slight change where we are covering 3 to 18 years in under new education policy. So therefore, new education policy will cover aspects of what? So therefore, you might get a question in prelims saying new education policy will largely subsume which all schemes. So it will take the education component from ICDS, it will take the primary education component from right to education, and also the secondary education under Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan would be largely covered under the new education policy, which is from 3 years to 18 years. So that is coming to the school level. Now let's discuss this in detail. Now when we come to what are the differences between right to education and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. First of all, right to education talks about the concept of neighborhood schools. Neighborhood schools is nothing but where the children can walk to school or cycle to school. So neighborhood is where a particular village is there, the school should be guaranteed in that village or guaranteed near your house. So that is what we say neighborhood schools. Now in urban areas, we notice that many neighborhoods will not have sufficient background to establish a requisite infrastructure, let's say playgrounds or proper schools or proper classrooms. So neighborhood school also talks about your infrastructure constraints are addressed through community classrooms. So community classrooms are established. Community classrooms can be established in places such as panchayat buildings, railway stations, or any common property which is owned by the government or shared property resource, or also could be organized at the panchayat level. So it does not talk about the requisite infrastructure constraints as were discussed under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Then next it talks about reservation for economically weaker sections. So we have certain seats or certain places, even private schools will have to give reservation for EWS. Now coming to teacher quality. Under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the main constraint was that the teachers were not adequately having a sufficient knowledge of your Bachelor of Education, or also they were not habitual or they were not standardized testing for them. So now under your right to education, every teacher will have to clear the state level teaching eligibility test, that is STET or CTET, that is Central Teacher Eligibility Test, in order to qualify for teaching. And also regarding the availability, first the teachers had many duties such as polio duty, election duty, or many other duties which the government announced from time to time. But in order to improve the serviceability of education, right to education made it mandatory that teachers should always be mandate only for teaching. So therefore, we ensure quality and availability of teaching staff. Also, capacity building of teaching is done through your DIETs, that is District Institute for Education and Training. That is that the teachers will have to go for regular sessions for capacity building of the teachers themselves through District Institute for Education and Trainings, that is on a weekend class. So it is about capacity building of the teachers themselves. Plus, when we come to curriculum, we notice that there are many schools such as your state boards, you have central boards, and you have also got religious schools such as your, let's say, SGPC schools are there, or Christian schools are there, or your madrasas are there. So what the problem was that because of lack of common curriculum, they found it difficult to progress beyond a certain level because the degrees they used to get was not accepted by the higher education. So the right to education makes a provision for boards even for religious education. So there's a famous statement by Narendra Modi as well, where he says that I want people with Quran in one hand and computer in the other. So it is about balancing the scientific need, also balancing the need for mathematics, English, science, and good subjects which are make you progress along with the requisite knowledge of that religious organization. Then it talks about zero detention. So zero detention is a concept where everybody will pass up to the class 8. But now, very important to note that there was a recent amendment here that now the states are free to adopt the hold back, that is detention policy. That states are free to adopt where children can be detained at class 5, class 8. So through your term and examinations, term and exams. So it is about your zero detention has been made voluntary for states. Then we talk about student-teacher ratio. In Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we did not have a clear-cut picture of student-teacher ratio. But in Right to Education, we talk about student-teacher ratio of 1:30. 1:30, that is one teacher for 30 students. So also we talk about that we should not have single teacher schools and we should have proper division of the syllabus. And that's why many states we see are planning their schooling and planning their processes in such a manner that they're combining various schools to form a school which is having adequate scale to cater to all needs. Now coming to what is Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. Now after your Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or after your Right to Education, you might have some people who are very good in studies and some people who are more of vocational in nature. They need vocational training. So for vocational training, we further divide RMSA, which is having two subcomponents, which is National Vocational Qualification Education Framework and National Skill Development Corporation. So what is the difference between the two? First of all, NVQEF, that is National Vocational Qualification Education Framework, will provide module-based training. So this word is very important. NVQEF provides module-based training, whereas NSDC will provide you the certificate for the training. Now what is the difference? Basically there might be some children who are habitual of working in family enterprises or they are working already through their children at work. So now they might be adequately skilled in a particular topic, but what they need for certification is a simple life skill, that is how to speak English, how to make a good CV, how to market yourself, how to perform in an interview. So NSDC and NVQEF together will have what we call recognition of prior learning. So this has been asked in UPSC as well, that is recognition of prior learning. So both of them will take cognizance of recognition of prior learning and design the modules according to the need of the student and provide the adequate certificate so that you become employable in the future. Then when we come to Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, that is nothing but expansion of degree colleges, engineering seats, medical seats, etc. And also we talk about Pradhan Mantri or Prime Minister's National Research Fellowship, where there is a grant available for pursuing master's courses for various students, especially in your institutes of national importance such as IIT and IIMs. Now, again, what is the main difference between Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, RTE and RMSA? So when you notice that when we talk about computer labs, we talk about science labs, all those labs are only required when you go to higher classes, that is class 9th and 10th. So when we talk about RTE school and when we talk about RMSA, so RMSA is Rashtriya Madhyamik, where we talk about better infrastructure such as computer labs, science labs. But in order to take a holistic perspective, because now in the situation of COVID, probably online learning will start from an early age. Also, there's a need for gamification of education. There's a need for new ways to educate. There's a new way to create audiovisual effects so that children can absorb knowledge better. Therefore, the new education policy talks about a comprehensive coverage of 3 to 18 years with adequate infrastructure. So that's why we need to revamp the policy and do away with this artificial division between your lower school and higher school. Now, coming to your health as a topic. Now, under health, first of all, Integrated Child Development Scheme or Anganwadi scheme is the main principle behind the early age. Now, this covers broadly two aspects, that is RMNCH, that is reproductive maternal health, plus your adolescent girls. Then WIF scheme, that is weekly iron folic scheme. So clearly we can see ICDS is catering to three people, that is pregnant and lactating mothers, your children 0 to 6, and adolescent girls. Now this weekly iron folic scheme is to boost the iron deficiency or to tackle iron deficiency and mainly anemia in India, because we have a huge problem where 40 to 50% of the women in India are anemic. So what happens with this? You have low birth weight of the mother, or the birth weight of child is less, and the mother's weight at the time of birth is also less. So that creates a big problem for management of your IMR and MMR. Now that's why reproductive, maternal and neonatal health is very important, along with taking care of the mother and the newborn along with the adolescents. Now when we look at ICDS in detail, so what all do we cover in ICDS to improve your status in IMR and MMR? That is infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, and also your under 5 mortality rate. First of all, we have a scheme called Umbrella ICDS. So this restructured ICDS scheme was started in 2017, where ICDS services were based on your comprehensive result framework. That is, it's not just caters to what is the duty of ICDS, it will cater to the overall life cycle of the role of child, mother, adolescents, etc. So how do we do this? First of all, it provides Anganwadi services, that is nothing but health, education, nutrition. Then it talks about scheme for adolescent girls, that is through, for example, weekly iron folic scheme and also through immunization. Then we talk about child protection services, national creche scheme. National creche scheme is nothing but that the people who are daily wagers or working mothers can take the use of this facility, where they can, this national creche scheme acts like a daycare center for them. Then we have National Nutrition Mission, where we have to fight malnutrition, that is fighting the problem of stunting, wasting, and low, that is what we say, low age, low height, low weight. And also we have Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, which is using the principle of DBT, or what we say, cash transfers, in order to encourage institutional delivery. Now these cash transfers are for encouragement of institutional delivery and also adequate nutrition. Then we have scheme for welfare of working children in need of care and protection. So that's why Umbrella ICDS will cover all aspects and all services which are related to your early childhood, to fight nutrition, to fight IMR, MMR, and whatever disease we see and the nutrition problems arriving at an early age. Then when we talk about the health ecosystem in general, we have a system where we have PHC, CHC. So if you see, we have a vertical structure largely being where PHC and CHC broadly fall under NRHM, and your district health center and your PGI or postgraduate institutes and your All India Institute of Medical Sciences, they fall under your National Health Mission, or what we say National Urban Health Mission as well. Now both of these are serviced, or what we say referral based services are possible because of Dial 108 services. Dial 108 services is nothing but your national ambulance services. Now this PHC, that is primary health center, community health centers, district health centers, and your postgraduate institutes. Now in order for these to function, now in the revamped model, we have so-called Ayushman Bharat and health and wellness centers. Now health and wellness centers will primarily perform the function of PHC, CHC. Your district health center is nothing but your district hospital. So PHC and CHC will largely be replaced by health and wellness centers, and we have a target of establishing 150,000 health and wellness centers. So what are these centers for? First of all, these are planned in a manner where there is adequate ratio according to WHO guidelines upon the number of beds per people, amount of doctors per people, amount of volunteers such as ASHA workers, your ANM workers, and also it is about coverage of population, where each sub-center will cover roughly a population of 20,000 to 30,000, and your community health center will cover a population of 1 lakh to 1,20,000, and your district hospital will cater to urban area. Now we need to modernize this infrastructure. So if we talk about PHC and CHC, they are being revamped under Jan Arogya Yojana or Ayushman Bharat scheme. And then when we come to district hospitals and your higher multi-speciality and super speciality hospitals, we talk about PMSS, that is Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Scheme. So under PMSS, we have three components, that is upgradation of your district hospitals. Second is setting up of higher education and your multi-specialty hospitals such as PGI or AIIMS in various states. So right now we have established 6 plus 1 in Delhi. So we are in the process of establishing a multi-specialty and a super specialty hospital in each and every state. Then it also gets an added component of traditional medicine. Traditional medicine being Ayush hospitals. So there is adequate balance of Indian as well as Western medicine in these programs. So therefore, there is also an attachment towards establishment of Ayush hospitals. So if you see that recently there have been few bills which have been introduced in this session, where we talk about Ayurveda as a proper knowledge to fight COVID as well, and they are pushing the knowledge of Ayurveda should be spread, and they are encouraging the system of what we say Indian system of medicine, which is nothing but Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy and naturopathy. Now when we come to medicines, broadly medicines can be grouped into two parts. One is your generic medicine and one is your patented. Patent and generic, what is the difference? Patent is what we say is the exclusive right to your novel creator. So patent is nothing but an exclusive right to sell that medicine because of the process and the expenditure and the value of research and whatever inputs have been gone to it. Now when the patent expires, that is usually in a period of 7 to 8 years, the medicine is generic. That is, each and every person or everybody can manufacture that medicine for sale to public. Now, depending on the nature of the medicines, we have National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, that is NPPA. Now this body keeps a check, because we cannot say that health will be relating to affordability, because in the end it is about your health, it is about right to life. So NPPA decides what should be the adequate pricing of patented medicine and generic medicines. So if the NPPA finds that some medicine is being overcharged, they will go for price regulation. That price regulation is based on scientific calculations, scientific surveys, feedback from the public, feedback from the industry, competitor behavior, branding, etc. For example, like when we buy Crocin, now Crocin is also paracetamol. So normal paracetamol you will get at a cheap price, but Crocin, just because of the brand, they cannot charge you higher prices, because branding should not enter the affordability of medicine. So somewhere NPPA balances the need for innovation and also the need for extending health coverage to the common population. Now when we come to generic medicine, we have schemes like Jan Arogya Yojana or Jan Aushadhi scheme, and we have various schemes at the state level. And when we come to patented medicine, we have issues like compulsory licensing, evergreening of patents, so what is patent evergreening? Evergreening is nothing but that when you make little changes in the medicine and you keep on taking the patent again. So that is what we say patent evergreening. So this has been discontinued under section 3D of the Indian Patents Act. Then what we have is compulsory licensing, that whenever we feel that there is a health emergency, so there we can ask the patent holder to give the knowledge transfer to Indian company to manufacture it in a mass scale. So that is what we mean by compulsory licensing. So under patented, we have two options, that is, it should not be evergreening of patents, and it should not, and whenever we need, we can declare a health emergency under compulsory licensing. Then when we come to what are the components of your Arogya Yojana? So that is what first is your Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi, that is the insurance. So every family will be insured up to a limit of 5 lakh rupees per year, and it covers a lot of illnesses and hospitalization, or what we say in hospitalization coverage. Then it also covers cancer patients, it also covers financial assistance suffering from specified rare diseases. So therefore all these three were clubbed into your Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi. Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi is nothing but your insurance, or what we say Pradhan Mantri insurance for your health, that is in hospitalization coverage. So broadly it covers what? All illnesses, cancer patients, and also rare diseases. So this can be asked as prelims question, that are rare diseases covered under your Ayushman Bharat program? Yes, they are covered, but for specified rare diseases. Now when we come to Ayushman Bharat in general, as we were discussing in the first part, that Ayushman Bharat component has two main sections, which is health and wellness centers, which is nothing but combination of your primary health centers and your community health centers, to expand the coverage of NRHM, that is National Rural Health Mission, to a broader basis. Plus it will get assistance from ASHA and A&M workers. ASHA and A&M workers, that is accredited social health activists, who are more of volunteers. So they believe in what we say their main goal is social and preventive medicine. That is spreading awareness and also preventing the symptoms, like noticing the symptoms and preventing the disease. And when we come to A&M, that is auxiliary nursing midwife. So they are mostly based related to childbirth related issues, childbirth. And also they encourage you to go for institutional delivery, take your vaccines on time, make sure that you go for proper checkup, neonatal maternal checkup, prenatal maternal checkup, etc. So all these are concepts which will be assisted through your health and wellness centers. Then coming to the second one, which is National Health Protection Scheme. That is about your cancer coverage, it is about rare diseases, it's about your insurance, and it is also capacity building of the hospital themselves. Now, when we look at the expansion of this scheme, we found that the government sector does not have the requisite capacity to cater the in-hospitalization coverage to every Indian. Therefore, private sector participation was necessary in order to successfully implement this scheme. Therefore, we have empaneled hospitals where private sector participates through PPP model, where certain beds will be reserved in certain state, and in some states it is that the cashless insurance scheme comes into play. So therefore it has helped cross a milestone in covering the in-hospitalization coverage for every individual. So then when we come to the coverage of your Ayushman Bharat scheme, that is National Health Policy. So what does health policy talks about? So broadly, health policy takes an assurance-based approach. Assurance for the bottom 50 crore people, or what we say 5 million families in India, or 10 crore families in India and 50 crore people. That is assurance-based people. Assurance-based means that you will get adequate support from the government for hospitalization coverage. You will get medicines at an affordable rate, that is NPPA. Then you will have micronutrition deficiency has to be looked at through National Nutrition Mission, adoption of what we say food fortification, milk banks, ready to use food, that is RUTF, ready to use therapeutic food. Then we have to go for Make in India. Make in India is important for so-called medical devices. See, mostly India faces an infrastructure constraint in managing its healthcare services. So we have to go for indigenous production of medical devices. In my last video, we have covered about incentives to mobile phone manufacturing, electronic manufacturing, and manufacturing of medical devices in India through PLI scheme, that is Production Linked Incentive Scheme. And lastly, it talks about application of digital health. So in the future, we have conceived a plan, although it is still under consideration, about a national health card, where it will contain all the information regarding the allergies, regarding the blood group, regarding the past medications, regarding the status of insurance, etc. So it will be like your social security number. That is, it is a number which will create a database, and it will help you in maintaining proper records, vaccination records. And also, it talks about digital health in the sense of e-hospitalization. So what do you mean by e-hospital? E-hospital is nothing but where people can take appointments of OPD, that is outpatient department, in various multi-specialty hospitals online. You can check the status of blood banks, blood availability. You can check the status of availability of bed. For example, during COVID, we use the National Digital Health platform to know where COVID capacity is there. COVID capacity in the sense of availability of ventilators, ICUs, bed capacity, etc. So this National Digital Health Policy has helped us to manage COVID in various states. And we have various successful models in various states like Karnataka, Kerala, Mumbai, which are now emerging as best practices for application of digital health. Then, so this is for today. That is the policies of health and education, which might be asked as a conceptual basis, application of digital health in COVID, and all these questions can be asked. So please see the slides, and also I would say that go through the proper notes. You'll find many schemes and many health and education related things, and please go for comprehensive coverage of new education policy. Thank you.